It is one of the most commonly repeated refrains in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Fandom.
I think everyone knows at this point that Joey should have beaten him if it was not a shadow duel. I really do feel like Yami Marik very much relies on the power of the Shadow Realm.
He so heavily relies on out-of-duel things. Every time you lose life points, you lose a portion of your body. Every time you lose life points, you lose part of your mind. And he would have lost to Joey Season 2.
There's a pervasive belief that, 1, Joey had a deserved victory against Yami Marik that was stolen from him in some way, and more broadly, 2, that Yami Marik is relatively weak as a duelist because he relies on his shadow games. I get it. I used to say both of these myself. But it is time for us to elevate our discourse and realize we were wrong. And in this video, I will definitively prove that these ideas are built on a major misunderstanding of Yami Marik's character. Here's how I'll build my case. In part 1, because I'm a fair guy, I'll start by acknowledging what's true in the other side's argument. No, more than acknowledging, I'm going to double down on it. People say Yami Marik relies heavily on his shadow games. I'll take it one step further. Yami Marik not only actively incorporates shadow games into his strategies, but he even goes so far as to purposely make worse plays in the card game for the purposes of advancing his shadow game, including with this final raw play. This is admittedly a very interesting part of his character that I do want to unpack, because when you look under the hood, this is something almost entirely unique to Marik among Yu-Gi-Oh! Villains. However, in part 2, I will show why that doesn't matter, that even though he's a duelist who, unlike almost anyone else in Yu-Gi-Oh!, actively neglects his card strategies in favor of his shadow games, it doesn't change the end result. You can take away his shadow games entirely, and he is still way stronger than most of you are giving him credit for. Finally, with our new understanding of Marik, we will reanalyze the Marik-Joey duel and see that the people who say Joey deserved to win are misunderstanding the key takeaway of the duel. It's an incredible moment of growth for our friend Joey, but not in the way that people say it is. Let's get into it. Part 1, Marik's alternate win conditions. So first, let's recap. Joey has just made his triumphant comeback and summoned his fancy new boss, Guilford the Lightning. Marik, who originally said he wouldn't need his god card, is like, alright fam, fair enough, you got me. I underestimated you, but gloves are off. I'm icing you this turn. He then uses Monster Reborn to special summon Ra and explains that he's using the Phoenix mode effect to pay 1,000 life points to destroy a monster on the field. But wait, he just said he's going to win this turn. Using Monster Reborn to special summon a monster that lets him pay 1,000 life points to destroy Guilford, leaving him with 900 life points and no field, is a play that decidedly does not win the duel. Joey is smart enough to point this out. He's like, hey dummy, destroying my monster doesn't win you the game. Then Marik is all like, bro, how did you already forget about my sick-ass shadow game? There's literally a lifeline going from your chest to the monster to remind the 7-year-olds. Keep up. You feel the pain of your monsters, and as already established, taking a direct hit from Ra will kill you. Marik was not concerned with Joey's life points. By using Ra to destroy Guilford, his win condition is to skip the middleman and take Joey's life. As one commenter on Reddit put it, Yami Marik was pursuing an alternate win condition: murder. I mean, zooming out a bit, what is even the point of Phoenix mode? You can pay 1,000 life points to destroy a monster on the field? That effect is really bad, right? And don't get me wrong, I don't mean really bad in the normal Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime sense where the cards are always really bad. Even Chain Destruction and Feather Shot, which we understand to be terrible cards, are not terrible cards in universe, because in a situation where writers can will any card to the top of the character's decks, they're exactly the cards that are needed in those moments. But even in the anime, where good cards are mostly defined by their ability to do whatever random thing the character happens to need in that moment, this is an effect that does basically nothing for Marik even in the context of the episode. I mean, this is the final boss monster of the final boss character using its final form on the final turn, and it doesn't even win the game.
What?
The effect is so bad that when Ra has its cameo in GX, they literally change the effect from an or to an and to let it use both Phoenix mode and point-to-point transfer in the same turn, because they wanted the fan service of Phoenix mode, but didn't want to deal with the headache of writing a game state where special summoning Ra just to use Phoenix mode was actually useful. The only time that Phoenix mode does anything important to the actual card game is during the Yugi duel, where it has utility as a way to defeat other god cards. Seriously, as someone who was into character decks, I have been using the anime versions of Ra in various online or in-person friend duels for the better part of 20 years. I can count on one hand the amount of times I've actually used Phoenix mode. It wasn't until writing this script that I realized why. In the anime, it only exists as a vehicle to kill the opponent. When you try to remove that from the equation, Ra's most iconic effect is so far below every other god effect that it's functionally worthless. And this is indicative of a larger theme. For large portions of his time on screen, Yami Marik's strategy has very little to do with the actual effects of his cards. Don't get me wrong, I know that in Yu-Gi-Oh! Villain duels are almost never only about the cards played. Villains always find some way to inflict real damage on top of the normal card game. But usually, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Villain logic goes, I use super powerful, scary card game combos that you've never seen before. I also inflict real damage or have some other scary power, therefore, I'm really strong. And of course, Marik often follows this formula too. If he never did, then I wouldn't be making this video. But for basically the entire Mai duel and for large parts of the Joey duel, Yami Marik forgoes the first part of the equation entirely. Unlike any other Yu-Gi-Oh! Villain in Duel Monsters, and almost any other Yu-Gi-Oh! Villain in Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yami Marik often makes card game plays that range from mediocre to purposely worse, just so he can inflict pain on his opponents, because often his card plays are incidental or even irrelevant to his win condition. I'll get into examples, but one interesting thing I want to point out along these lines is how the writers choose to build narrative tension with Yami Marik. For example, look at the beginning of his duel with Joey. For several turns throughout the beginning of this duel, the characters are acting like, and narratively it feels like Marik is winning. But why? During this time, what does Yami Marik actually do in the card game? Not much. He summons 2 vanillas and he attacks Alligator's sword and a sheep token. So why is everyone acting like Marik has the upper hand? Is it because, like Noah, he sets up a big scary Chekhov's gun deckmaster with a secret ability that is definitely going to bend you over in like 20 turns? Is it because, like Pegasus, his plays are all bolstered by an ability that lets him counter every single card that you play? Is it because, like Darts, he easily dispatched the strongest duelist in the world's most iconic combo? Or like Siegfried, where he set up an FTK against his opponent, and then when his opponent barely countered it, he used a card that let him skip to his next battle phase to do it again? Nah, man. He's got 2 vanillas. It isn't until the end of the first episode that Yami Marik's card strategies themselves finally become the source of his narrative strength, when he uses the effects of Hell Poemer and Plasma Eel, although Plasma Eel has an asterisk, we'll get to that later. For basically the whole first episode of the duel, the narrative tension from Marik is all about his ability to inflict pain, while his actual cards themselves are pretty mundane. But narrative tension is just the tip of the iceberg. Let's keep going. Take a look at Marik's duel with Mai. Here, the beginning is very similar. Marik doesn't start the Shadow Game until several turns into the duel at the end of the first episode. Up to this point, Mai has destroyed Marik in the card game. She's countered every strategy he's had, with Yugi even pointing out that she easily defeated the Revival Jam combo that almost broke him. And she's still at perfect life points, almost double his. As you can probably guess, he's doing this on purpose, as he makes clear. But look at the differences between Yami Marik and, say, Yami Bakura, who about 10 episodes prior also purposely let himself fall behind early in the duel. Yami Bakura was getting monsters into the graveyard to set up for Dark Necrofear. In other words, he was letting himself fall behind in the card game so that he could gain an advantage later in the card game. If you were watching that duel as a Master Duel replay, you could intuit from the replay alone why Yami Bakura spent the first few turns letting his monsters go to the graveyard, because it's a play that makes sense within the internal logic of the duel. But Yami Marik isn't like Yami Bakura. His internal monologues during these first few turns reveal several different strategies in going easy on Mai at the beginning, and none of them relate to the actual card game. Rejoice and grab the light of hope, because the shock when you fall into despair will be multiplied. That's strategy 1, building up Mai's confidence so she suffers more when she's defeated. A bit later, he keys us into strategy 2. As background, remember this is the episode where Joey lies to Mai, saying that she wasn't in his dream, and Mai convinces herself that she can no longer rely on any of his friends. So Marik designs a shadow game specifically to exploit this. Remember, every time her monster gets destroyed, she forgets one of her friends. But listen to what he says. I know your emotional weakness. I can see what will give you the most pain, the best way for you to die. Mai Kujaku, what you fear most is being alone as your friends vanish. You have the pleasure of dying in loneliness and despair. But how does he choose this shadow game? Well, luckily, he tells us. That's where strategy 2 comes in. Right before he starts the shadow game, Marik sees Yugi's crew cheering for Mai. Then he says, so you're her friends, then you'll help me massacre her. And only then does he finally begin the shadow game. So to recap, for Marik, purposely falling behind early in the duel is about 1. Building up his opponent's confidence so that he can revel more in their suffering, and 2. Scouting out not their deck weaknesses, as you might expect in a card game show, but their emotional weaknesses. Side note, there's actually a third strategy that Marik tells us he's pursuing here, but we'll get to that one later in the video. For now, let's focus in on this idea that he's choosing the best way to emotionally manipulate Mai. Why is he doing that? Because like in the Joey duel, he's pursuing an alternate win condition unrelated to the card game. But unlike in the Joey duel, the win condition this time is slightly different. This time, the win condition he's pursuing is Mai's total emotional breakdown. And it works. A lot of people forget this, but Marik literally wins the game right after he starts the Shadow game. Without playing any notable cards and with almost half of Mai's life points, he completely breaks Mai emotionally, rendering her unable to duel and winning the game. The only reason the duel doesn't end right there is because Mai gets some outside help. Atem transports into Marik's little Shadow Realm pocket dimension to snap her out of it. And listen to what Atem tells Mai here. He tells us what Yami Marik's win condition is. In a Shadow game, the one who breaks emotionally is the loser. Like with using Phoenix mode against Joey, Yami Marik's strategy is to win via an alternate win condition that has nothing to do with the card game. By the way, I know this duel plays out differently in the manga, particularly the beginning, but don't worry, we'll get to that later. By the end of the duel, Yami Marik is back to his Joey strategy of just trying to kill Mai with an attack from Ra, although this time the attack would have brought her down to 0 life points as well. But one funny detail that's easy to miss during this sequence is that one of the stated reasons for playing holding arms is, in locking up his opponent's arms, Marik is preventing the opponent from putting their hand on their deck, ensuring that she can't surrender so he can kill her with Ra. Almost every other villain in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is trying to make the opponent surrender. Not Marik. Again, this is purposely giving himself a disadvantage per the rules of the card game so that he can kill Mai. Back to the Joey duel, I mentioned before that Marik uses this anime card called Plasma Eel. It can't be destroyed by battle. Also, as a quick effect, it can equip itself to an opponent's monster and reduce its attack by 500 points during each of the opponent's end phases, complete with an electrocution of the opponent, both on equip and at each end phase. Like Phoenix mode, the equip effect is horrible without the electrocution, making you give up a Marshmallow in exchange for a Shattered Axe.
Okay.
What's more, Marik equips Plasma Eel during Joey's main phase, even though its effect doesn't do anything until Joey's end phase. He could have waited to equip Plasma Eel until the end phase when its effect actually procced and kept his defensive Marshmallow through Joey's battle phase. And I know what you might be thinking, this point about him equipping his monsters slightly too early is way too in the weeds for the anime. They make all kinds of plays in the anime that would be really bad in real life, and these plays are often considered really good. We can't expect anime characters to be Jesse Cotton, so unless there's some indication that the characters in-universe consider this a bad play, it's kind of cheating to use it as evidence that Marik is purposely making suboptimal plays. Along these lines, you'll notice the 3 previous suboptimal plays I mentioned with Marik were all grounded in how the characters in-universe talked about them. Joey saying that Ra couldn't win the duel that turn, Marik telling us he's going easy on Mai, and holding arms preventing the opponent from surrendering. But I feel this one is fair game because Marik is quite explicit in showing us how he thinks about Plasma Eel in terms of its electrocution potential, not in terms of its card effect. He says the following turn that he'd rather not destroy Joey's monsters because he wants Plasma Eel to keep electrocuting Joey. Even when he summons Plasma Eel, his framing is very funny. He's all like, yeah, this monster has like an effect or something at the end phase, but anyways, beyond all that, it also does something way sicker before electrocuting him. I mean, if you were to take Yami Marik's character to its logical and hilarious conclusion, think of how he must approach deck building. Because of his unique shadow game, his combos aren't Nightmare Wheel, Plasma Eel, and Lava Golem so much as they're Torture Rack, Electrocution, and Molten Lava to the Skin. It almost reminds me of Duelist Kingdom, where a card like Full Moon, beyond the actual effect written on the card, adds value to your deck by the very virtue of it being a moon. The effects are almost secondary to the fact that they are flavored to cause as much pain to the opponent as possible. And this is especially true for Yami Marik when you look at his manga counterpart. In the manga, Yami Marik uses Visor Death to crush his opponent's skulls, and Makura the Destructor to slash them up with bloody wounds. And that's relevant here because there isn't meant to be a major difference across the two mediums in how Yami Marik uses his monsters to torture the opponents. He's broadly meant to be the same guy doing the same things. Rather, the difference is in how the manga can portray this same concept. how a lack of censorship allows it to take center stage visually and thematically, as opposed to just being described in dialogue and then watered down with less graphic counterparts for the monsters. The manga shows us that his monsters aren't torture themed, they're torture devices. He doesn't run Dralago because it's menacing and weird looking. He runs it because he's gonna drill into your skull. While there are some points I've made so far that are slightly different in the manga because of some adaptation differences, like the beginning of the Mai duel not existing, that's largely beside the point, because in the manga it is openly and obviously true that the real horror of dueling against Yami Marik is about the pain. No lie, after reading the Mai duel while preparing for this script, I felt myself getting genuinely nervous about what I was going to have to watch Joey go through, which I can safely say I have never felt about any Yu-Gi-Oh media. His duels in the manga aren't children's horror, they're real horror, and I can assure you, it's not because of his card effect. This is also totally in line with Takahashi's original vision for Yu-Gi-Oh! Of course it makes sense that he wrote a villain for whom the card game is often nothing more than a vehicle to play torture games. Yu-Gi-Oh! Originated as a story about torture games, not card games. So yeah, you guys are right. Yami Marik's shadow games are an inextricable part of his character and his dueling style. But here comes the fun part. Part 2, the Immortality deck. If you take away Yami Marik's ability to win by breaking the opponent physically or emotionally, what's left? A very, very powerful duelist. And you can see that once you put all these examples in a broader context. Again, it's understandable that people think this way. I also used to. If we're talking purely about card game proficiency, separate from his mind games, it does seem like Mai is stronger than Marik, right? Until the second she tries to summon Ra, she is dominating him the entire game. And in the Joey duel, people are correct to point out that Marik was just a few seconds away from losing. But looking at these facts out of context leads to a total misunderstanding of what the show is actually saying about these two duels. What context am I talking about? Well, Yami Marik has 2 more duels. The Yami Bakura duel we'll get to in a bit, but there's one more duel in Battle City that changes everything. Yami Yugi versus Yami Marik. Don't get me wrong, I don't point to the Yugi duel to say, well, he was strong there, so that means he's strong. I don't think that doing well in one duel inherently nullifies doing poorly in other duels. I point to the Yugi duel because the very specific ways in which he is strong, and the very specific ways in which his strategy differs, clearly compel us to retroactively re-evaluate Marik's duels against Joey and Mai. When comparing Yami Marik's dueling style against Yugi to these 2 other duels, there's no other conclusion. Against Joey and Mai, Marik wasn't just making worse plays here and there to torture them. The entire time, he was going easy. Against Joey and Mai, Marik was playing with his food. Firstly, just up front, remember that I've already explained that Yami Marik explicitly tells us that he's going easy in these duels. Against Joey, he tries to win without using Ra, and against Mai, he lets her get ahead for the first few turns. But maybe that's not all that definitive. What the characters say is helpful as evidence because it can tell us how the writers want us to think about something, but it can also be limited. Characters say all kinds of things for all kinds of reasons, and in a sense, it's still a claim made inside the story. But once these one-off lines become things that are consistently reinforced by the narrative, once that dialogue actively aligns the things that are actually happening on screen, then it stops becoming a single data point and starts functioning like a thesis that the show is actively trying to portray. And remember that point, because I'm gonna keep coming back to this whole thing about how the dialogue and the on-screen events are consistently aligning. For now, part of what I mean by on-screen events is the card strategies. How do the writers use the card game itself to tell their story? For example, during the part of the Mai duel where Marik tells us he's going easy, he's not even using his own strategies. He uses only his minion strategies during that part of the duel, something he never does again, aside from Rival Jam and Jam Defender's cameos as pieces of his new strategy, Egyptian God Slime. This was another thing that, as a character deck lover, I always thought was so strange growing up. But once I started working on this video and realized he said he was going easy, it made so much sense. What's more notable is that after he starts the Shadow game, he barely plays any cards at all. Seriously, just look at how many actual cards he plays once the Shadow game begins. Aside from his final combo, holding arms, holding legs, and Ra, Marik uses exactly one other monster, Makira the Destructor. So yes, Mai spends the entire duel countering his strategies and outplaying him, but over half that time is spent with her trying to get over his 1600 and some back row like it's an Apple Clifford Towers. And basically, right after she finally destroys it, he changes it to a rock. So Marik told us he was going easy and his card plays were basic. Okay, but none of that is very definitive yet. It's notable that he doesn't play that many cards, but there's nothing here strong enough to substantiate a claim that he's definitely going easy the entire time. The Joey and Yugi duels are where things get much more interesting. Remember, there's 2 parts of this Joey duel. Marik when he's not using Ra, and Marik after Joey plays Guilford the Lightning, forcing him to lock in. Focusing the analysis on pre-Guilford Marik, let's do a pop quiz. Helpoemer, Coffin Seller, Plasma Eel, Nightmare Wheel, Legendary Fiend, and Lava Golem. What do these cards all have in common? Of course, they're all cards that Yami Marik played against Joey during this duel, but they're also cards that all have effects that slowly break down the opponent's life points and resources over the course of several turns. This list represents every major strategy he plays until Go for the Lightning comes out. And after that, he only plays Nightmare Mirror, Monster Reborn, and Ra. And by the way, major strategy here is defined as any effect that actually resolved that wasn't a vanilla, a generic support, or a card that just existed to support other cards. And by the way, it includes every single effect monster that he played. Now, let's compare this to the Yugi duel. You couldn't write more opposite strategies for Marik if you tried. This duel is a blitzkrieg. It is all gas. And if the never seen before or again one-of-a-kind card lets him break every known rule and attack on the first turn isn't hint enough for what's in store, then please allow me to continue. Vampiric Leech also has a second effect. On the very first turn, it let him put Ra into the graveyard. He then goes on to play Left Arm Offering to turbo into Monster Reborn, Dark Spell Regeneration to take Monster Reborn from Yugi's graveyard, Zombie's Jewel to get Monster Reborn back from his own graveyard, Magical Stone Excavation to get Monster Reborn back from his graveyard again, Card of Sanctity to turbo through his deck, Granadora to increase his life points so that he can use Phoenix Mode or point-to-point transfer again, Class System to prevent Ra from losing to other god cards, and Surprise Attack from Beyond, a card that first lets you Monster Reborn and then lets you conduct a second battle phase. Every single card here is in service of one goal, turboing into Ra to OTK his opponent. Yes, as I was in the middle of realizing this over the course of the duel, the writers gave me an assist by basically having him look to the camera like Meredith Palmer and explain this exact point. Yugi, the theme of my deck is Immortality. It's built to keep reviving my god until my enemy is defeated. Compare this to what he tells Joey, which is that he doesn't even plan to use Ra because Joey isn't even worth the effort. Is there any doubt at all that the theme of Marik's deck in the Joey and Mai duels was decidedly not to keep reviving his god until the enemy is defeated? The point of this line is to tell us that these are his real strategies. This is how he plays when the gloves are off, and it is perfectly supported by the differences in his card plays. There's only one point in the entire duel where Marik plays cards that do not advance this strategy, and it's when, in the middle of the duel, he switches over to using the Egyptian god slime strategy. Why do I say switches over? Well, let's let Marik explain it. I don't have a card that can retrieve Monster Reborn from my graveyard. I'll defend with Egyptian God Slime until I get a chance to summon Ra again. Pretty undeniable after that line that his strategy has a single focus. Remember how almost every single card he played against Joey was a slow burn card? Well, this right here is the only moment in the entire duel where he uses any cards with this effect, and it is one single card. For these few turns, while he's stalling to get Ra back, he resorts to his other strategy, summoning Boganian and using Jam Defender and Egyptian God Slime to defend it. Keep in mind that Egyptian God Slime is a copy of Obelisk, so during these few turns where he isn't summoning his actual god, he is still using a card that is on par with the god and that is also invincible. That wasn't stalling against Joey, that was having fun. Stalling in the Immortality deck is completely different. Aside from these three cards, Boganian, Egyptian God Slime, and Jam Defender, as well as the three cards needed to make Egyptian God Slime and also Jurigeno, his mandatory early game vanilla, every single other card that Yami Marik plays in the entire duel exists to turbo into Ra and successfully resolve its graveyard revival effects. Every one. And when contrasting this version of Yami Marik with the one from his last two duels, the one who played Makura the Destructor Beats against Mai or who only used slow control strategies against Joey, it's difficult to come to any other conclusion. Against them, Yami Marik was going easy, like he said he was. But it goes even deeper. Remember when I said Marik had one more strategy when he was going easy at the beginning of the Mai duel? At one point, Atem yells, "Marik, stop this pointless game." Marik replies, "It's not pointless to torment your friends. Good, Yugi, get more angry. So angry that when we battle, your hate equals what I've built up over the years." Motherfucker's talking to me about Joey and Mai. Joey and Mai were foreplay.
What do you mean by that?
He played that way against them because he wanted Atem to suffer, to make his duel with him more satisfying. So next time you talk about how Yami Marik power scales compared to other Yu-Gi-Oh characters, you can't talk about the one who wasn't even destroying his opponent's monsters because he wanted to electrocute them for a few more minutes.
Get out of here, man!
You have to talk about the one who summons the canonical strongest monster in the entire show and goes for an OTK with it almost every single turn. You have to talk about the Immortality deck. But I'll return to draw broader conclusions with that point later. Stepping back a bit, there's one more wrinkle here. Thus far, I've established that the two sides of Yami Marik are going easy on you with slow control and going for a raw OTK every turn. but his duel against Yami Bakura and regular Marik maps slightly less cleanly onto this divide. Fair warning, this is a bit of a rabbit hole because the key arguments here are focused on the Immortality deck, but I want to head off any counter arguments by showing how this duel is actually completely in line with my theory, not opposed to it. So, in the Marik Bakura duel, these lines are a bit blurry. It's pretty clearly established that he's not going easy, and that he takes a shadow game against a fellow item holder very seriously. He even says up front that he's planning to him with Ra, and also says near the beginning that he's trying his best to draw it. On the other hand, like in the Mai duel, he barely plays any cards, literally sitting on Dralago for the entirety of the duel, the only monster he even summons aside from Ra. While I do think there's a very strong in-universe resolution to this, before I explain it, I also want to throw out that this is likely also based on real-world considerations on the part of Takahashi. This duel, alongside the Yugi duel, forms a pretty classic fictional trope where there's a strong power that gets a slow reveal when it's first introduced, and then once the stakes need to be upped again later in the show, that same power gets used several times in the same fight. Realistically, one reason Yami Marik didn't turbo into Ra 20 times here is because the very existence of the point-to-point transfer effect is the twist, the final reveal of the duel. This duel is even spliced together with footage of Kaiba slowly uncovering the existence of the point-to-point transfer effect, with both scenes hitting their climax as the effect is revealed to the audience. By the Yugi duel, on the other hand, when the metaphorical cards are all on the table, they can up the stakes by showing him use those effects several times in a single duel. But also, I do think that there are very strong in-universe reasons why Yami Marik's strategy of going all out against Yami Bakura doesn't look quite the same as when he goes all out against Yugi. So remember that this is the duel where Marik convinces Bakura to try to steal the Winged Dragon of Ra, using Dark Designator in exchange to take it from Yami Marik's deck. But when Bakura tries to normal summon it by tributing 3 monsters, Yami Marik plays Joyful Doom, a card that, by the way, would be totally impossible to make in the real game, because it implies that declaring a tribute summon starts a chain link. Although, now that I think about it, with the Light Force Sword moment in the Yugi Kaiba duel, that actually could be something that's considered a canon part of the god's anime effects. Although, canon anime god effects is an oxymoron. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Joyful Doom turns all the tributed monsters' attack points to 0 right before the tribute summon takes place, and adds all those attack points to Marik's life points. Yami Bakura is pissed at regular Marik for letting this happen, and Marik responds, "That card was never in my deck. Damn it, he anticipated that we would try to take the Winged Dragon of Ra." This line right here is our hook. If you'll remember, Mai said the exact same thing like 3 episodes prior. He gave me the card because he knew I couldn't control a god card. So, if under normal conditions, Yami Marik has 2 strategies, slow control to play with his food and balls to the wall immortality FTK, there's also a 3rd strategy he relies on in specific scenarios, one he pivots to when he sees that someone is trying to steal Ra from him, the same one he pivoted to in the Mai duel. Play conservatively to lull the opponent into false confidence, let them steal Ra, and once they do, use their lack of knowledge about how Ra works to pull the rug and take the victory. Again, this isn't a reach. Aside from both opponents straight up telling us that this is his strategy, there's a ton of support for the idea that Yami Marik actively uses his opponent's lack of knowledge about Ra against them. Don't forget just how much screen time is dedicated across the Battle City Finals to how Yami Marik has an advantage because no one knows all of Ra's effects. I mean, Ra's text literally appears and disappears based on whoever's wielding it, and it's also written in hieratic characters so the unworthy can't know its effects. It's also a huge point of discussion in both the Mai and Joey duels. And also, Kaiba has a whole side arc about learning Ra's effects, which eventually leads to him finally respecting Joey for making Marik show off the Phoenix form. And the climax of that side arc is the famous Fiend Sanctuary. That arc for Kaiba picks up during this duel. And more importantly, like in the Mai duel, the fact that his opponent doesn't know how Ra works is a big part of Marik's win condition in this duel. So while Yami Marik started the duel like he did in the Yugi duel, trying to turbo into Ra, which he told us, he changes course once he sees Bakura and Marik's plan. He doesn't do much, waiting for Bakura to do the work of getting Ra out for him. Once Ra is out, Yami Marik uses his own knowledge of his own card to make it useless and put it in the graveyard. And then, because regular Marik doesn't know about Ra's graveyard effects, Yami Marik can take advantage of that moment, summon it back, and easily take the duel. The card choices during this duel also support this read of Yami Marik's strategies, despite the fact that he only plays 5 aside from Ra, 2 of which are pretty uninteresting. But when he plays Card of Sanctity early in the duel, it's specifically noted that he's trying to turbo into Ra. It's right after this that he realizes Yami Bakura is trying to steal it. Then he plays Vengeful Bog Spirit, a card basically designed to take advantage of someone's lack of knowledge about Ra. If you're unaware of Ra's graveyard effects, it purely makes Ra weaker, giving it summoning sickness upon being normal summoned. But Yami Marik, who does know about the graveyard effect, can just use point-to-point transfer's instant attack effect to bypass Vengeful Bog Spirit entirely. This weakens Ra when it's used by an opponent, but does not subject Yami Marik to the same restriction. And obviously Joyful Doom does everything at once, both weakening the opponent's Ra and setting up his life points for point-to-point transfer upon its revival. The other support for this is that right before Bakura gets the chance to summon Ra, Yami Marik seems to be goading Marik into summoning it. He tells Marik, "Actually, I'm not sure you're the host's real personality. The Millennium Rod is now in my possession. Maybe I'm the actual personality of our host." This plays into Marik's insecurity that he isn't the real Marik, an insecurity that summoning Ra would very conveniently help him alleviate. The final support for this read is the mere fact that it happens twice. Yami Marik tricks two people into stealing his god card, and both times he plays very low to the ground, not doing much, waiting for his opponent to spin their wheels trying to summon the god card, and once they do, he springs his trap and takes the game. With this final piece, we have a complete picture of Yami Marik's different dueling strategies. When he's playing with his food, like against Joey, he uses slow burn and control strategies. When he's going all out, like against Yui, he uses the OTK Immortality strategies. And while in the Mai duel, he started by pursuing the slow control Joey strategies, and while in the Bakura duel, he started by pursuing the OTK Yugi strategies, in both, he saw that they were trying to steal Ra and pivoted to his third strategy, where he lets the opponent summon Ra for him and then uses their lack of knowledge against them. Last thing I'll say on this point is, I've tried in this video to ground my arguments in real script interpretation, unpacking the dialogue, the narrative beats, and the themes rather than relying on the basic sort of X beat Y, Y beat Z sort of power scaling arguments. While I do think those arguments are relevant, I think people sometimes give them a bit too much credence without context. But because this is a video about how Yami Marik is a strong duelist, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Yami Marik easily washed the big bad of Season 2 and the big bad of Season 5 working together without even breaking a sweat. But even still, for the sake of argument, let's set this entire duel aside. I said we were leaving out unfair strategies and focusing purely on card prowess. So I will accept that taking advantage of his opponent's lack of knowledge about Ra is not allowed. Let's assume that opponents know about Ra's effects and restrictions and won't try to steal it from them unless it's beneficial to them. So we can leave this entire duel out, even though it's one of Marik's greatest feats. It doesn't matter. I won't need it. Let's land this plane. Conclusion. Billionaire, genius, playboy, philanthropist. I begin this last segment by reminding you of what I'm not saying. Nothing I've said today erases the fact that Yami Marik definitely still almost lost to Joey. He was genuinely scared that he might have played around too much and actually lost. So if you want to dock some points for overconfidence that could end up costing him a duel, that's super fair. And almost defeating Yami Marik is an amazing feat for Joey, one he definitely deserves credit for. But the story being told in this duel is fundamentally not one of Joey almost being stronger than Yami Marik. The story being told is the story of Marik's overconfidence. I mean, look at Kaiba's framing and why he finally shows respect for Joey afterward. He respects him for being good enough to force out Phoenix mode. In other words, hey man, congrats, I respect that you were good enough that Marik couldn't go easy on you. If you get one takeaway from this video, it's that. The narrative feat Joey proved through this duel was that he deserved to stand among the big dogs, that he couldn't be fought with kid gloves and shouldn't be taken for granted. But that is not the same thing as proving that he's as strong as Marik. I mean, even in the duel that we got, even after Marik was going easy on him for the entire duel, it is still a very dubious claim that he would have lost to Joey without Shadow Game shenanigans. Because if you strip away the Shadow Game and treat the duel as purely mechanical, like a Master Duel replay, that comes with other baggage. People put so much focus on the fact that he was one attack declaration away from winning. But what self-respecting Master Duel player would purposely leave their field open with 900 life points? Remember, Marik wouldn't have pursued this Phoenix mode play and wouldn't have left his field empty if he didn't make the bet that he could kill Joey before Joey could attack his life points. Claiming that Joey's win was stolen from him would require rewinding to the start of the turn and letting them play it out with card game rules only. If Marik wanted to pay life points to destroy Guilford, he could have revived Lava Golem, destroying Guilford by battle and then taking 700 damage during his next standby phase, leaving him with 1200 life points, which is 300 more than he had after Ra, a 3k beater, and still one more turn after that to get Lava Golem off the field before losing to Burn. If he just wanted to not lose, he could have special summoned Plasma Eel, which couldn't be destroyed by battle. I know it's a pretty silly exercise, but I just do this to emphasize that there really is no basis for saying this. But it's such a commonly repeated thing. Why? Why have we all said this? To be honest, I blame Takahashi, because the writing is too good. The moment where Joey faints is so compelling, and the image of him summoning Gearfried only to collapse into it is so powerful that it sort of drowns out the actual logic of the moment. It makes us indignant, angry at the future we could have had. Joey, the underdog joke duelist, was so close to stepping into a protagonist role, just as close to destroying the expectations of the characters as he was to destroying the expectations of shonen anime. And that's valid. In fact, some have made the case that the season suffers because of its lack of courage in committing to this alternate timeline. I disagree, but I still think that's a much fairer argument. But if we're purely talking in terms of the strength of Yami Marik, the truth is, the Joey and Mai duels make Marik look stronger, not weaker. Because even if you say they almost beat him, which is a dubious claim in the Mai duel, all that really means that they almost beat him at half strength. They almost beat him with one hand behind his back. They almost beat him before he took the weights off. The real takeaway isn't that Yami Marik almost lost. The real takeaway is that Yami Marik took down two OGs, Battle City finalists, some of the greatest to ever pick up a duel disc, and for the entirety of the Mai duel and the vast majority of the Joey duel, he wasn't even trying. So, I ask you, even cutting all Shadow Game torture antics out completely, factor in the Immortality deck. Who is taking this man? Who is taking Yami Marik when he's summoning Winged Dragon of Ra and going for an OTK 6 times per duel? Take away the Shadow Games. Who are you? I OTK every turn with the strongest monster in existence. And yes, I know there's actually a lot of answers to that question, a lot of characters who could beat Yami Marik. When taking into account heroes and villains throughout all the shows, the power levels can get pretty ridiculous. And if I'm being honest, he's probably not even the strongest villain in this show. And I'm also not even implying that once Joey reaches full power that he couldn't get his lick back if they ever had a rematch. If we're talking Battle City Yami Marik versus post-DM Joey, I'm probably taking Joey in that fight. But let's not tell lies about Yami Marik. The weight of these two duels has been hanging around his neck in every tier list conversation since 2002. And despite the fact that he might enjoy being chained up, it's time to set him free. Yami Marik is a damn strong duelist, and he deserves to be up there with the best of them.